Hi folks, welcome to Babin's Bees. Today is July 17th and we're having a look inside of our hive. We know that we're coming close to the end of the nectar flow, so we want to take a peek and see how has this hive been doing in gathering some nectar and making honey. This is a fairly large hive and has been very active throughout the whole season. Hasn't swarmed or no swarm cells, didn't need to split, so it's a very healthy hive. Wanting to get that population at the peak as that nectar started to flow. Let's take a peek in and see what we see. So we take this bar here and we can see inside the cells there where there's some really good nectar in there. It's nice and thick. It's not capped yet, but it's fairly thick. Up top here, they've started to cap that. And if we just kind of take a knife here and just touch it, we'll be able to see the nice honey in there coming out. Now the bees, of course, will repair any mistakes that I make, and there it goes. You can see it dripping out. But this is all nectar, but still pretty thick and probably ready to eat. But we'll just wait until they finish capping that. So we'll put this one back, take a peek here. And we look at this one. Now, this went in as an empty bar on June 26th, so it's really under a month since this wax has been made. It's fairly white in color. You can see that wax as they make it is fairly light. As time goes on, however, it does get a bit darker, but you can see up here, this is all capped honey. So they put a thin layer of wax over the cells, and inside there is honey, but of course you can see the nectar in here as well. So they're working to cap that that nectar in there. So that's pretty good. So that's 2 bars on their way. Let's just take a quick peek on the other side here. And you can see on the other side there is nectar in there and it's fairly light in color, but they've only capped a little bit here. So they still have some work to do on this one, but it's getting there. And you can see right here, you can see bees depositing nectar. So this is what they're doing. So this bee right here, as an example, is depositing nectar in that cell. So you can imagine how many flowers they have to visit in order to bring back that nectar. And they're depositing there. We'll keep going. Now this bar here is much further along in the process and is very heavy. So I'm going to hold it with one hand here as long as I can. But down here there'd be some nectar with that's not capped, but all of this is capped. That's ready to go. That honey is ready to be able to be harvested. But we're going to wait a little bit longer because we want them to cap that nectar when it's ready. Now bees, of course, don't always cap every single cell. There are times when the nectar is ready and it really is honey. They just haven't capped it, and sometimes they just don't. But it's still harvestable and it's still good to eat. But pretty remarkable. I'm going to flip it around the other side. Go ahead, that's fine there. Yeah. So we can see the other side. And here we see that they've capped, I'll just put it there. They've capped less here. There's still more to be capped, but this is all capped here. But again, if you take a look at the bees here, you can see they're there and they're depositing that nectar. They want to make sure that every cell is full and flush before they go ahead and put this very thin sealed wax to seal up the cell. And you see many of them depositing. So they're working very hard at storing that nectar. Even this little lady right here, you can see, and maybe I think she's probably doing the wax there, perhaps, or depositing. This one's fairly deep in, eh? Look. You can see that one is head first right in there. Many of them are depositing. Now these bigger bees here, of course, these are drones. So they're just hanging out. They're just looking. They don't harvest any nectar, and but they do get fed, and they like to be around the food, that's for sure. But they're just watching. Let's do one more and see what we see. Here's another one. It's got a good weight to it. This one as well. This bar we put in as a blank bar on June 6th. I'm going to flip it because it is fairly heavy to hold with one hand. So I'm going to flip it this way. We'll have a nice look here. Again, this went in as an empty bar on June 26th. So it's under a month old as wax. And you can just see how light in color it is. But you also see they've capped almost the whole bar. Now there is nectar in here, of course, and they're still depositing. But this is all capped honey, ready to go. And you can see like there's no space wasted. They're even working on the outer edges here to make sure that every cell is filled to the brim before they go ahead and they seal that up to harvest. So I say another couple of weeks and they'll keep progressing here. They'll keep putting nectar in here. They'll keep capping that wax, and then it becomes ready to go. Ready to harvest. So we're gonna wait. It's hard to wait though. You definitely want to be able to harvest, but we're gonna wait. Let's take a look at one more bar here before we go. This is what we call the front of the hive, and this is what we call the back of the hive. And they typically will store most of their honey for the winter in the back. Now, of course, they're not going to need all of that. There's still some other things to bloom. We still have goldenrod that blooms in September, so they still have other sources of nectar before winter. So that's why we're safe to pull some of this honey. Of course, they need food for the winter as well. The brood, uncapped, unhatched bees are typically here, food typically here. So as they kind of move along, they'll put the honey here. But let's have a look at this other, I'm just gonna take it out here. We'll take out another bar and just take a peek. Now what I'm doing is the bees will attach that comb to the wall of the hive, sometimes just to stabilize it. So I just detach it a little bit so I can take it out to inspect it. Flip it like that. And we'll take a look and see. And so here's what we see, which I'm not surprised. So I'm gonna flip it this way. I'll put it here just so that we can see a little bit better. Tap the bees lightly just so they move. And we have two things on this bar. Here, of course, you'll recognize as capped honey. So that's ready to go. But here, just kind of a darker yellow, that's brood. So that's unhatched bees. So what's happening here is that we're getting closer to the brood nest. So the queen needs lots of room to lay. She's laid eggs in there and some bees will hatch out. Once those bees hatch out, however, it does give more space for the bees to put nectar. So this bar, eventually, there'll be no more bees here and they'll fill those spaces with honey. So it's honey all here right now, and here is some brood, but they will, after those bees hatch out, they'll fill that with nectar and it'll become honey. So it just kind of continues to grow as the population goes down a little bit, as you head into your August and September months, November, October. Of course, you'll have less bees, so they'll fill that space with nectar. We'll just take one quick peek on the other side here. We see the same thing here. So quite a bit of brood here on hatched bees, lots and lots of honey here. But we anticipate as those bees come out, they'll fill them with nectar. So here we are again. It's in July, we're mid-July. The bees are doing really well. This hive has been incredible. It's stayed at a very healthy, high population, which is what you want as that nectar is flowing. So they bring in the maximum amount of nectar as possible, which of course then becomes our honey. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.